This is a picture, if you're looking at the audio version of this, side by side of Joni Ernst when she went in to Washington, D.C. On the left, that's a mom from Iowa. It's an okay haircut. Her face is a little bit, well, I don't know, momish. On the right, there's a woman who's lost a lot of weight, maybe had a little work done. Her skin might be a little bit Botoxy. Her hair is nicely made. Her dress is nicely presented. She looks younger all these years later. She's been in Washington, D.C., and remember this about Joni Ernst. She said she was going to go to Washington, D.C., and she was going to castrate pigs on the sidewalk. Show how much she hates her. Some pork barrel spending. She never did that. There's something deeply seductive about Washington, D.C. Good seduction can take years. It's bit by bit by bit, getting closer and closer, bit by bit, absolving this or that, little guardrail. Years it takes sometimes. In the case of Joni Ernst, it's a fait accompli. She's now a creature of Washington, D.C. She has nothing to do with Iowa. And I think she's furious that she, who trumpeted her status as a veteran, has not been called in to be the defense secretary. So we'll build a case for this here in a second. There's a lot of people who responded to corruption in a different way. You have Joni Ernst responding in this way, buying in, becoming seduced, and staying. You have other people who looked at, say, for instance, the seduction of doctors into a medical system where doctors are no longer really listening to their patients and having interactions with them and looking at the whole holistic person. They've been instead seduced into a system where their iPads show them how to earn more money with every visit, such as taking a rake on pharmaceuticals they cause you to take, or procedures they cause you to get. There's all sorts of bonuses laid out there. There's pharmaceutical companies who lay out bonuses to medical practices. There are procedures doctors get paid bonuses for pursuing. There's things like this. Even hospitals and medical centers and sometimes even urgent care facilities get paid a percentage if they can increase the number of people who wear seatbelts. And they get punished if they don't do that. And this is done through surveys with iPads, etc. It's changed the system. A lot of doctors fled. They refused to be seduced. Some of those doctors went down to Mexico. Now, that was freaky to me because I think of Mexico maybe the way you do, which is like those places we used to see in Castro's Cuba. I don't want to go there for health care. That's not what they've set up. They've set up a world-class healthcare facility in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico that does one thing very, very well. They help people get out of having to have surgery. They help people recover from surgery far more quickly and far more durably. And they help people be relieved of pain. Pain that would otherwise, in America, you'd be told it's either surgery or pills for the rest of your life. In the case of Renewed Healthcare, they use ethically gathered stem cells from placentas and umbilical cords only. They culture those cells down there so they can put up to 42 million of them in your body. The first thing those cells do is they just destroy inflammation. Then they go about rebuilding tissue because those cells are building cells. They were designed to build baby. They can rebuild your cartilage in your knee. You may not need a knee replacement or a hip replacement. They can rebuild tendon. You may not need surgery. I'm witness to this. My left shoulder blew up several years ago, and I did not get stem cells in it. I got surgery. My left shoulder is still weaker than my right. In fact, I may have re-injured my left shoulder doing something that my right shoulder had no issue with. My right shoulder, I got my push-ups and pull-ups back in 11 weeks. In my left, it took 48 weeks, and it's still not as good a shoulder as my right. And I just recently had surgery on my right. I'm all in on Renew Healthcare. Go check out if they can help you. It's Renew, RENUE.healthcare. Simply tell them you're a member of the Todd Herman Show family, and they'll tell you if they can help you. It's Renew, RENUE.healthcare. Is Joni Ernst borking Pete Hegseth? There are people who don't know what that means. Robert Bork was a nominee for the Supreme Court, and he was too much of an intellectual, too much of a big thinker, too much of a fan of freedom. He was too independent, so he couldn't be allowed in Washington, D.C. The woman who in 2014 promised to go castrate pork hogs on the Potomac River, and she didn't do that, now purports to stand as some defender of some moral standard in Washington, D.C. This is Joni Ernst.
Okay, it doesn't sound on your answer that you've gotten to a yes. If I'm wrong about that, correct me. And if that is the case, it sounds to me as if the hearing will be critical for his nomination. Am I right about that?
I think you are right. I think for a number of our senators, they want to make sure that any allegations have been cleared, and that's why we have to have a very thorough vetting process. And that's why I was happy to sit down with Pete and have that conversation with him yesterday. So again, all I will say at this time is that we did have a very thorough discussion over a number of those issues, and the vetting will continue, I am certain, through the next month or so.
She wasn't concerned about Lloyd Austin. Lloyd Austin, famous for his ridiculous plastic face shield and ridiculous over-the-face mask. Lloyd Austin, who has installed gender madness and DEI madness into our military. Lloyd Austin, who worked shoulder to shoulder with General Whiterage, who offered to commit treason against America with his counterparts in the Chinese Communist Party military. No concern. But Pete Hegseth, she can't bring herself around to supporting him. And again, I cannot help but compare the Joni Ernst who came from Iowa and the Joni Ernst who is on TV now, looking younger and slimmer, better skin, better teeth, better hair, better jewelry, and of course, a far better net worth. This is the woman who is the mother of a fallen Navy SEAL. She knows Pete Hegseth.
Hi, my name is Karen Vaughn, and I am the Gold Star mother of fallen U.S. Navy SEAL Aaron Vaughn. Aaron was a member of SEAL Team 6 and was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2011. Shortly after his death, I became engaged with Concerned Veterans for America and joined their Defend Freedom tour, along with Pete Hegseth and many others. So I can tell you that I have been a close friend of Pete's for over 10 years, and the allegations about him are completely bogus and outrageous, honestly. I am now a speaker for the American Warrior Initiative, and I travel across the nation continuing to talk about the cost of freedom. And I just want to say that I've been on Fox multiple times. I've been in Pete's presence multiple times in the last 10 years, even since I left the Concerned Veterans for America organization. And Pete is as good as they come. Pete was born for this job. And all of the stuff that's going around about him right now, I can 100% adamantly deny. Pete is a good man. He was actually born for this job. And I cannot imagine the relief that Blue Star mothers across this nation will feel when they know that their sons and daughters' lives are in the hands of somebody like Pete, who has actually had boots on the ground, who didn't sit back in Washington and make rules for the lower than him. He's been there. He's fought alongside the people that he will now represent. And this is a very big deal. Please disregard the things that you were hearing about this man. It is insanity. He is a good man.
A woman with actual skin in the game, having lost a son and having now spent her life out speaking about this and helping others, seems to me to be more credible when it comes to the belief or understanding of Pete Hegseth and what our military needs than Joni Ernst. Just given, again, Joni Ernst's transformation. I mentioned her net worth. Right? She's one of the people who hasn't gone out and become a billionaire or multimillionaire, except for this. She will never have to work a day again in her life. She'll have a government pension. She'll sit on boards. She can go be an MSNBC contributor tomorrow. Her payoff is apparently going to come later. She's changed. There's no doubt about it. There's many things you can say about the tragedy of George Floyd. But if you want to have any believability, you can't say this. This also is Joni Ernst.
Today, many people across the United States are honoring the life of George Floyd. And so I would just encourage everybody to take pause and really reflect upon the loss of his life.
The loss of George Floyd's life began far before he participated in his own death by becoming so addicted to drugs and so high in fentanyl that day that he may well have died by drug-induced psychosis and temperature and heart attack if he wasn't, in fact, killed by a police officer, which is what a court ruled. They said that he was killed by the cop. I don't agree with the verdict, but that's what the court said. The tragedy of George Floyd's life began, of course, when his parents divorced, when he was left alone a lot, negligent parenting. And look, I'm not anybody to go brag about parenting. I've made my mistakes. George Floyd's life at this period of time involved taking captive a woman who was pregnant, putting a gun to her belly, and threatening to murder her unborn child. He was a guy who'd been involved in the making of pornography. He'd been a guy who'd been involved in beating people up. He was a tragic figure. What part of his life was Joni Ernst celebrating here?
And recognized that it was taken way too soon. And it is very unfortunate that his death was the catalyst for talks that needed to happen a very long time ago.
What talks? Race relations in America had gotten far better until a guy named Barack Hussein Obama came along. And then they got far worse because Barack Hussein Obama is a divider, a guy whose life was dedicated to following the works of a guy whose life was dedicated to following the works of Lucifer. That's Saul Alinsky. The fact is, the people who organized the Black Lives Matter Incorporated protests with Antifa handing a helping hand didn't care about George Floyd. They cared about the glorious revolution, the color revolution. Is Joni Ernst obviously or so completely consumed by DC that she can't get this? Or is it this that she needs more Botox and more skin treatments, and so she'll say anything?
So I think it is a great time for us to reflect upon the life and the loss of George Floyd.
Let's reflect on his life. What value did it bring? George Floyd was a man and a human being. He was loved by God. He was made in God's image. We're to mourn that, and we're to be absolutely truthful. George Floyd said some things from time to time that young men not make the mistakes he made. That's helpful. But George Floyd is now being lionized by a woman who served our military to defend us from enemies, foreign and domestic. We have domestic enemies who use this man's tragic life, criminal life, to go out and create criminal acts to increase the murder of cops by 100 to 300%.
And understand the significance of moving forward and having really positive, encouraging talks about what it is to be a person of color across the United States. And so I'm so thankful for the great conversation that we just had with Senator Tim Scott, and a way that we can move forward and talk about racial injustice and how we can solve it and be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
There is no sign whatsoever that there was any racial injustice involved in George Floyd's death. The officer has not been shown to be a racist. No racist records on this, but none of this mattered to Joni Ernst. She was willing to read these lines. She came out of Iowa a mom in work boots. She's in Washington, D.C. now, I think, completely captured by the seduction of the town, the promise of money, the promise of power, and a beautiful set of teeth.